Welcome. Let's begin in a spirit of openness and courage. We're going to breathe together for a moment. Breathe together. So this morning, may we find the wisdom to distinguish between the fears that protect us and the fears that limit us. May we discover that our deepest terrors often point towards our greatest gifts. May we learn to dance with uncertainty, finding grace in the spaces between the knowing and not knowing. And may we remember that courage is not the absence of fear, but the love in action despite our unconsciousness. So it's the love, the unconditional love in action with fear's presence. So contemplating on those words. So today we're going to go deeper into this. May the blessings be for this session today, for this sharing in the House of Unconditional Love. I'm Cynthia, and we are going into a topic that I touched on last week, where I spoke about the greatest fear, and I touched on fear's literacy. Fear's literacy. Fear's literacy, or the literacy of fear. So if we have music, just really softly, thanks. So good morning, beloved community. Let's get into this. Today is interesting. I'm going to start with a confession. And you can share yours if you wish. We have a private chat on the Restream, but I want to start with a confession because I can feel it. I'm feeling it. And this past week, as I prepared this sharing on fear, on the literacy of fear. I notice my own fear, my own sensations. I notice it now, right? Fear that I wouldn't or couldn't do this topic justice. Fear that talking openly about fear might make some of you uncomfortable. Fear that I might reveal too much about my own struggles with uncertainty, with not knowing. Although, let's face it, I have a knowing. However, getting to that, right? That knowing, like standing here before we press go, all systems go. And I could feel it. I feel the energy and the potential of being slapped in the face, the potential of expanding into great realms of possibility, and knowing that that's what life is all about. And so I realized this is exactly why I need to talk about fear. This is exactly why I'm here. Because it's always here, shaping our choices, whispering in the background of our lives like this music. When the music was a little too loud, it distracted me. Did you see? Completely. Because the music goes, that music is our teachings. We have a connection, deep connection to it. And I went there to the music, right? Distraction. So we turn the music off for now. And we can use that as a metaphor or a way of seeing fear or understanding fear. That music is how loud it is, how distracting it is. But when it's very soft, it's in the background. Oh, maybe it's subliminal stress, the invisible shadow, right? Maybe it is the mantras that you've planted the seeds of in your life that are growing. The I exist in the moment, the seed ready to grow. 1 becomes 2, becomes 3, becomes 4. It's the dance of consciousness. 4, becoming conscious as a human being, right? Planting the seed. So I realized that it's exactly what I need to talk to you about and share, because it's shaping our choices. It's whispering to us in the backgrounds of our lives, just like the music. So what is the music of your life? It's often controlling us in ways we don't even recognize. They're the unconscious projections, right? So I don't know if you were around last week. I spoke about the greatest fear, why we run from unconditional love. This week, because I touched on the idea of this literacy or illiterate aspect of not understanding fear, right? Today's sharing comes. So noticing. So as I'm standing here, I'm noticing what's going on in my body. I'm listening. So we've been taught about fear in a way that's incomplete. I have taught emotional literacy for years. For 20 something years, emotional literacy. This is a little different. This is what's incomplete. All right. So what if fear isn't the enemy? What if fear isn't what you've been taught and conditioned and what everybody, majority of cultures talk about, particularly Western culture? And fear is actually our wisest teacher. I'm not even going to say what if, because it is. I'm standing here. Fear is our wisest, greatest teacher. If only we knew how to listen. And it's our relationship, how we listen or don't listen, that determines whether or how, just like your best friend, right? Sometimes they annoy the crap out of you. They're so annoying, but they're telling you, or your partner, and you're raising something that you can see and maybe they can't see. And they'll see it as possibly something coming at them. And it could possibly be that. It could be that. And it could be you being conscious and sharing or bringing some light, love to fear. Being kind to the fear. Being compassionate to the fear. Being loving to the fear. To be in unconditional love. So today, I want to invite you into another radically different relationship with fear. Right? You want to come? You there whether you want to be or not. So it's just about whether you want to be literate or not. Whether you want to have a we often say a toxic relationship or a healthy relationship. And I would say pretty much every human has a toxic relationship with fear at some point, but some, that is their full relationship. You're living in a war zone in your own body. So we want to do this not to eliminate it. We don't want to get rid of it. And I'll tell you why. You stick around, right? We don't want to eliminate it because that would be really unwise. You'd be getting rid of a big part of your wisdom, your innate intelligence of your body. So you want to be, okay. So I was going to say, you want to be dumb? That's dumb, right? Suppressing. It's depressing, suppressing. Yeah. So we're here to develop what I'm calling fear literacy, the ability to read fear's messages, to understand what it's really trying to tell us, right? So as a mystic, for years, people have come to me for answers. They want answers. And I've been contemplating this deeply for probably the last 15 years of, so we're going slightly sideways today, right? I don't know where exactly this is going to take us fully because I can feel it rising, but we're wanting answers. And the spiritual ego will fully dance and express with that. That's not a bad thing. That's a magnificent thing. And when we recognize that, we can bring the spiritual ego and the survival ego together into something even greater. Consciously. We use a lot of the spiritual ego techniques like readings, all the psychic mediumshipness. Nothing wrong with that. I teach all of that, right? To get you to a place of consciousness where you have the ability to get those answers directly for yourself. Ultimately, that's why I'm here. However, we do like to dance, right? A mystic will take you direct access to the beloved, okay? Through yourself, in yourself, not external, outwardly. Okay, we talked about that last week. And that's still up if you want to go back and have a look at that teaching. So again, everything we're doing is for acceptability, and that's okay. Making life acceptable. It's just being conscious. At what times am I doing that? So let's get back to the message. The ability to read fear's messages. And so, on these different levels of consciousness, So we may say the psychicness. I teach about the 3 levels of intuition, the survival intuition, the gut intuition, the intermediary intuition, where the mediumship and certain types of channeling and Akashic record, those sorts of things. Okay, all awesome, all fun, all informative to some degree. Divine intuition is bypassing in the most healthy way directly to the intelligence, right? And when you do that, you could do that first. It's like seek first the kingdom of heaven and all else will come to you, right? Or go direct. And when you go direct to the beloved, to God, to Ein Sof, to all that is, to great mystery, you have access to all other levels. So what has fear got to do with that? Well, let me share from these, not all the places, but the intelligence of fear. So when we understand fear, what it's really trying to tell us, we can respond with wisdom rather than reactivity. This is why, if you look at, like some people have said to me, they don't know what I do because I do all this stuff. When you can see it from the point and not the circle, you'll see it all comes to the point, like the gong. Oh, I tried to show you the gong, but the camera's followed me. So that's the point, the 1 and the 9. That's life. Expansion, contraction. To the point, to the abstraction. When we bring it all back, when we feel fear, it's through our nervous system, through our energy and our nervous system, into our nervous system. Same with love. Love and fear just is. When we're talking about fear, most people are talking about the fear of fear or the fear of love, okay? But let's look at the intelligence of fear for a minute. Let me share something that, I don't know, it might surprise you, might not. You're equipped with something like 50 million year old survival technology. And we used to talk about this in relation to an energy, a yang energy or a masculine energy called triple warmer, which is an energetic arm of the nervous system. It's the masculine energetic arm of the nervous system. So, it's one of the places to start if you're having any illness, any fears, really, okay, on a particular level of understanding, right? That hasn't evolved to our current technological age. It hasn't evolved, right? So fear is not a modern malfunction. It's not a modern malfunction. It's one of evolution's great achievements, right? A sophisticated guidance system. Okay, it tells you it's a guidance system that has kept life itself alive across countless generations. It's kept life itself alive. Think about that. And humanity is sharing that it is the evil of the world. The unconsciousness or the unconscious relationship with either love or fear is what you're projecting onto fear itself. It's like saying anyway, we'll go into that I don't want to get sidetracked. I'll be here for 2 hours, although that could be fun. But just think about that. So we've got this, to most of you, it's, it's a word, but it runs your existence. And here I'm saying, yes, it does. Do I need to unpack that? Do I need to unpack that? Because it runs your existence. So if somebody was running your existence, you'd be like, like your boss. Everyone sort of hacks on the boss, right? Yeah. Or somebody in leadership or whatever. It always comes back, you want to pull them down or whatever. But they're running your life. They're giving you existence. They've kept life itself alive. Without it, you don't exist. Without it, you do not exist. Thank you. Think about it. Countless generations. Think about it. Your ancestors who feared the right things at the right times, they survived to pass on their genes. So that's one aspect of evolution. It's one of evolution's great achievements. Right? The ones who didn't, their stories ended there. Fear has been humanity's guardian for millennia. Forever. Way back, even before we wore these skin suits. Well, only just before, in that second, I guess, right? Because in that moment in that time. So here's where it gets interesting. Our modern fears aren't just about our survival anymore, right? This is what we say about triple warmer as well. It goes off when you're in front of a bright light, just as much as it will go off if you're about to get hit by a car. You can't tell the difference. Okay, it's just information. So when you feel afraid before giving a presentation, before me standing here sharing, before you go to jump out of a plane or, I don't know, buy a new house or invest into a program or, I don't know, go on a first date with somebody, or maybe the second date has more power. I don't know. Is it still a third date thing? Not anymore. Well, I remember Happy Days, that show? It's like, when was it, third date? I don't know. Anyway, back in the day, in the happy days of the 50s. I wasn't around then, just saying. But all right, so we haven't evolved these energetic and physiological parts of us. So, right, before having difficult conversations, before coming on here, before doing something, you just don't feel like you may be doing enough or have enough, be enough. There you go. That's one of the greatest fears, the greatest love. So before making life decisions, that's your system functioning, not malfunctioning. You're going to feel like, oh, I have to do something about this feeling, right? So I was standing here this morning feeling a lot, which is unusual for me. When I come in, I'm just like, yep, I'm ready to go. But today I was like, whoa, there's all this. And I utilize it as my wings. Wings. I was just thinking my accent. Did you understand that? My wings. Or we could say wind, I guess. The wind beneath my wings. Right? from this contraction to woohoo expansion. It propels you into your greatness. Sometimes that is the fear of love, your greatness, or something you're about to. So I'll go into that if I get time, because I'm going sort of off track a bit, but there are fears that I want to share with you. So that's the ancient wisdom just trying to tell you. It's not even trying, it's telling you. It's telling you something. There's no try about it. It's doing it. Are you listening? There's something important here. That's the problem. The problem isn't that we have fear. The problem is we've never learned to read what fear is actually saying. We don't have the literacy to read what fear is saying, the language of the human systems. That's a lot. I mean, it's a lot. I've spent my life learning different systems. What's the body telling me? Because I know that behavior is a language. I've learned that particular language, which is very similar to the literacy of fear. So let's talk about some of the faces of fear. And, we can use different terminology, and sometimes we do, but today we're going to use this terminology and bring meaning to this for you. Through my reflection and study, I've discovered some different faces of fear. And so we talked about survival fear. And survival fear is like the guardian at the gate. And I used to call triple warmer, I still do actually. Triple warmer is the guardian at the gate. It's like the knight with his broadsword standing, making sure no one gets in. But when he's triggered, nothing gets out either. And that's the problem. There's no movement. But with survival fear, there's this gatekeeper, guardian at the gate. And this is where fear's doing its original job, keeping you alive. That's at that state of, if we look at the intuitions, that first gate of intuition, if you want to say it that way, right? Am I going to die? Am I going to live? When you look out the door, is it life-giving or life-taking, right? At that base level. So when you feel that sudden alert walking alone at night, I don't know what you feel. People feel different things, but you might feel sick in the gut, or you might feel, the hair at the back of your neck standing up, or, these physiological sensations. Something feels off about the situation. That's survival fear, or an aspect. There's a lot more to it, but in a nutshell, that's serving you well, right? Knowing not to go down that path, or, the difference. This is what, it's interesting, because in intuitive studies, this is what we were learning. We were learning what the sensations of spirit were. And it's not unlike what I'm sharing here. And this is why it merges so beautifully, because there is no barrier or boundary between what I'm speaking about with the physiology of like the sensations, how it feels and whatnot, to our relationship with spirit. And so those of you that have trained with me, particularly in trance, those sorts of things, mediumship, remember your experiences there and notice, is it? We're just naming, labeling, pigeonholing or compartmentalizing where or what that is, right? So again, literacy. What is the meaning? We're meaning making. So the second fear, or the next one we're going to just touch on, is social fear. The price of belonging, or not. What's the price of belonging, right? This is a fear that sort of remembers that for our ancestors, being rejected from the tribe meant death. For a child that can't look after themselves, being rejected by a parent or the tribe, extended family, meant hardship or death. That terror you feel, many of you, what are the three, they say the two or the three biggest fears? Public speaking, taxes, and death. So what do you think I'm about to say? That biggest fear, that terror before public speaking, it's not about the words. It's about that social fear or that social anxiety of being rejected by society, right? Then there's the existential fear. Our encounters with great mystery. So we might see that as the fear of love, right? So, I've seen this over and over with, working with people and working with some people, what their main goal is a relationship with what we call the beloved or God, like that mystic, direct experience, right? This is what we're talking about. When they have that experience, it's like, the bliss and all the rest of it. And then all the stuff comes in, which we'll get to, that's down the track. So there's a fear of death, because the closer we get to unconditional love is the closer to death. We can't experience the fullness of unconditional love incarnated at this point in time. There is potential. And so we're showing the steps to that, right? So there's a fear of death, of meaninglessness, of our cosmic aloneness. How many of you feel alone, feel misunderstood, feel like you may be going mad? Oh yeah, there's one in the back there. A few more over there. So these fears signal that we're grappling with our deepest question of existence. There's another one, which I guess is, we'll call it transformational fear. It's that edge of growth. And it's really similar, right? It's really similar in some ways. It still, to me, comes into the fear of love, because it's this growth edge. There's this fear that arises when we're being called to become more than we've been. That's what I've been contemplating lately. Like, that's what I'm feeling in my body. And I've been saying, haven't I? Like, there's more to, like, it's more. It's, it's like there's this drive that's come back around. I used to have it all the time. It's what propels me to stand here, to share, to do the work with you. Okay. So it's that fear that shows up before creative breakthroughs. Do you know that one? You felt that one? Or before the authentic self-expression, or just before the stepping into your power. And it's like, you just feel it inside. Okay. And the shadow fear, we might say, or the fear of fear. This is well, in a way, I can see this in both love and fear, because it's the fears that we don't know we have. So it really is in all the fears, the fear of fear, the fear of love. Right? These are the unconscious fears that drive our choices. And, they're behind the scenes. They're running in the background. They're keeping us small, keeping us safe, but ultimately unfulfilled. So, however you want to look at those, there's multiple aspects of or faces of fear. So learning the language of that. So fear as, I guess, a sacred messenger. Here's what I've learned. Or is a peace. Fear is not the opposite to faith. It's often faith's herald. Do you know what a herald is? We used to have a paper, I think we still do in Australia, the Herald. Hear ye, hear ye. I don't know if you have that in America, but, back in the day, yeah, the Brits, we still have the town criers and stuff. They wear the, hear ye, hear ye. Fear is the messenger. It's not the opposite to faith. Announcing that something sacred is about to happen. Hear ye, hear ye, in the name of the beloved. Okay? Unconditional love. In the name of unconditional love. Right? Something sacred is about to happen. Woo, woo. And we go into our spin. So, story time. I remember, and I won't go too much because I've really drawn this out a little bit, so we may run out of time today. But I remember when I first got called to ministry, and the fear was overwhelming, right? The fear was overwhelming. Some of the things that were coming up, and I have a whole story about that, and it's a pretty good story, but I won't tell it all today, but it does involve Jesus. Right. And for me, I laugh because every other deity had come to me before Jesus. And when Jesus came in and taught me, it was only a few months after that my uncle died at Easter and came back to life. And so there's a whole story and what I was taught and how I was shown, which does link to the teachings I taught at Easter around. That's the time when I was shown the new covenant, the new blood covenant. I haven't taught a lot on that, but I did touch on it, and I did do the paintings that were showing the substitution and Jesus being the substitute for the blood covenant at that time. But it went on. And so that's what I was being shown. So that's a whole nother story. But how I got to ministry was when I went to visit my uncle. It was a 2-hour drive. So a friend of mine came with me. We talked all the way down, and she's I would say a recovering Catholic, but that's just what she says. So when I would come up with these teachings and whatnot, and I'd just share, and she'd say, that it says that in the Bible. And I'd be like, oh, where? And I would go and have a look, and I'd be like, okay. So this is how I realized with Real Eyes that I was being shown with new eyes, I guess, because I never read the Bible. I'm not a religion. I wasn't christened and so forth. So when information comes in from all of these different places, they tend to relate to ancient texts and ways of knowing, and hence the mystic. And seeing how it all comes together to these teachings around unconditional love. But on the way back from visiting my uncle, who, by the way, is the identical twin brother of my father, when I spoke to the nurse, she said, "Oh, he's your father." And I said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "Well, he's your dad's twin, yeah? Same DNA. That means you're his daughter. Um, through, through the DNA, would have the same DNA." And I was like, "Oh." So think about that. I'm not going deep into this, maybe for another day. The blood covenant. I was shown the history of the blood covenant. And then this happens to my father, biologically, some weird, wonderful way, and comes back to life. And I get all these teachings. And on the way back, I had this knowing that I was to finish my doctorate. And when I went looking, I found a place, and it just so happened to have a ministry connected to the bachelor. So I completed that. And it's, it's all stuff that I knew, so it didn't take very long. And I'm still in the process. I've got 1/3 left of that process. My point being, I didn't set out to go, "Oh, I'm going to be a minister. Oh, I'm going to teach this, or I'm going to teach." It's like it's coming in. If I had a choice to go, "All right, I'm just going to go and paint every day. I'm going to be an artist." Well, I am, but the art and the creativity is part of processing and understanding the information that's coming through. So what was coming up for me is, who am I to think that I can serve this way? What if I fail? What is even failing? Like, what does it even look like? I got no idea. I don't go to church. I think I went 3 times when I was young. What if people see something else? What if, right? All the things that if you had something that you were called to do, you have all the what ifs or the buts. I can't do this, but this, but God. So beneath the fear was excitement, was aliveness, was a sense of rightness I couldn't ignore. It was the wings that the fear brought in. It was the wings, the wind beneath the wings. So I came to understand it wasn't, that this wasn't fear trying to stop me. It was fear trying to prepare me. And in fact, it had prepared me my whole life for what I'm doing now. My whole life. It wasn't saying, it was saying, let's put it this way, it was saying this is significant, this, pay attention, this matters, right? But if you have no literacy, you might hear, run for the hills, all the things that I just said before. You don't know. How can you preach? How can you teach? Even though it's throughout my lineage, and I've been doing it since I was, for the last 30 years. But not in this way. So we've got many spiritual religions that, like I said, all the deities, I could say deities because there's so many spiritual teachers that have come and shown me the way, right? I'm a mystic, right? They speak of groundedness or groundlessness. Let's say Buddhism, right? They've recognized or speak of the groundlessness, the terrifying and liberating recognition that there's no solid ground to stand on, right? There's no solid ground to stand on. I've said this, I've made artwork around it where there's no map. How do we know the next step? I don't know if those videos are still up, but probably 15 years ago, I was making videos around, mapping the place, like looking at the map, like, okay, as a seer, when that all went out, and it's like, well, we can only see so far. It's the groundlessness, and that this very uncertainty is where the freedom begins, right? We got Christian mysticism. They call it the dark night of the soul. Periods of spiritual dryness and terror that often precedes deeper awakening. In indigenous traditions, the vision quests, right? And that's deliberately walking into fear as a way of finding one's true name and purpose. I say, when I stand in the fire with you. I stand in the fire with you because that gateway is your awakening. But we get so terrified. There's something called the death alchemy, and it's a process. I don't talk about it fully publicly a lot, but just to touch on, there's a part where you are shown all your terror, all your faces. And if you're not familiar with them, or you haven't worked through or have a relationship with your fear, your terrors, your traumas, your stories and whatnot, when they show up, because you're seeing all aspects of yourself, it is terrifying. It's terrifying. You'll think it's demons and all sorts of stuff because you don't have a literacy of what the processes are of these advanced evolutionary steps in human development, evolution on every level. When you understand that, I've taken many people through that, but it's like being with them at that time when it comes naturally, or there are ways to move into that. But when it comes naturally and they see that terror and their stuff comes up, and when you can just meet that with them and see them come through that, and it's like, and they expand. They have, what's the word? They have, you've got the fragmented aspects of self integrating into one. So you start to speak in one voice. This is why, I'm just going to go on a side note here. This is why those of you who are, and I'm not against it, I said I teach it, but it's states of consciousness. So if you're going out to other aspects of self that you may call guide, passed over master, whatnot, you're looking outside yourself for your greatness or for the answers. Those consciousnesses are part of you, and you can integrate into them and be that power. Okay. Literacy. If you don't know, you don't know. Okay. So that's why I'm sharing. And that's probably why I felt like a lot today. So last week I spoke of this literacy of fear. How does it develop? How do we learn to read fears rather than just react to them? Okay, let me see the time. Okay. I don't know whether we go through this. Let me just see. feeling like I've got a story I want to share, and I don't know whether we will just... No, I guess we could do that. I'm going to tell you the story. You like that? Okay. So it's only a little story anyway, and then we'll go into a little bit of an idea of how to go into what we're talking about. But I saw a story the other day, and it was a little boy who was laying in a hospital bed, and he was staring eyes open at the ceiling, and he was saying, let me just see, he was saying, Jesus, you're so beautiful. Jesus, Jesus, oh, you're beautiful. You're so beautiful. Thank you, Jesus. I love you, Jesus. My mom loves you, Jesus. Oh, Dad, Mom misses you so much. Dad, I love you. It's making me cry. And he went on. And what I heard around him was laughter from the adults. He didn't budge. Jesus, I love you. Thank you. Thank you for saving me, Jesus. Dad, Mum misses you. She loves you. Are you all right, Dad? You're beautiful, Dad. Oh, my Dad, you're beautiful. Jesus, you're beautiful. He went on. And his mum was videoing it and speaking and laughing. Not laughing at him, laughing to distract her terror. That's my interpretation. The nurses around were giggling and saying insignificant things. He kept his gaze. He kept his connection with what he saw was Jesus and what I believe is passed over Father, because he's saying, Dad, Mum misses you. I love you. And he went on and on and on with that connection to Jesus and his passed over Father. This little boy, he must have been maybe 8, clear, his face bright-eyed, looking. His mum's videoing. He doesn't care what they're saying. He's having his experience with Jesus. I know what that's like. I have died and come back. I've been in a coma. I've seen similar, even that story I was telling you about when Jesus, right? And the gold and the, right? My point of the story is that the adults were trying to take him out of that. Why? Because they were scared. It was the fear of love, the fear of that greatness, the fear of something that they didn't understand, didn't know. It was so beautiful. And as I watched it, I could hear in the mum's voice, even though she was still trying to sort of make jokes about it, there were tears in her. There was the sadness. You could hear it because she was starting to get it. It was bringing up her fear, her loss, her sadness, her sorrow. Her son is in a hospital bed. I don't know what happened to him. But he said, Jesus, thank you for saving me. Maybe he had some near-death experience. So as a mother, I know what that's like. So mum's sitting there, oh, my son is talking to Jesus. Does that mean Jesus is going to take him? He's seeing his loved ones. He's seeing his father. Does that mean he's on his way out? Because if you've ever worked in hospice, right, or been with people in hospice, you know that they see things before they go. So maybe that was her fear. It doesn't matter. I'm sharing it to show you that the beauty of that greatness terrifies us. I know that when I was 10 and that happened to me, I didn't speak about things like that because I know that little boy is going to come out of that, be okay, try to tell his story, and he'll be shut down. Why? Because the adults around him will be scared. So he'll either be supported in that experience, which is a mystical experience, which my master's in metaphysics is on, how mystical experiences heal when they're integrated. Are there going to be people around him to help him integrate that expansiveness of love into unconditional love, which is he's near death to that degree? Jesus, thank you. You're so beautiful. You're so beautiful. I don't think I saved it. I'll have to see. But it was just a small little video. And I was like, it was so beautiful. But what showed me was the fear of the adults around him. Can he integrate that experience on his own? Possibly, but maybe unlikely. If the adults are scared, if they're in their fear, okay? That's the fear of love. So that's the little story. Where are we at? I don't know. Do we want to do a little? I'll go through this maybe quickly. We might be maybe 10 minutes over. I'm not sure. So we spoke of this fear literacy. How do we do it? How could we start to integrate some of what's going on for us? Okay. So when that fear arises, you know, when you hear something scary and you go to laugh, that's you're trying to distract. So when that mum and the nurses are in that depth, being with that depth and their own sensation, fears in the body. So when the fear arises, our first instinct is to often to fight it, to flee it, to freeze, to, you know, distract from it. What if we could learn to pause? If we could learn to pause, to create just a moment of space where the fear, between the fear and the response. That's actually a definition of mindfulness, actually. Forget who coined that, but it's, you know, as I said it, I was like, oh, that's familiar. So mindfulness is what's between the stimulation and the response, right? So having that. So let's do that together. Let's do this. So I've told you a story that may have brought up some things for you. But think of something that's been causing you fear, or what scares you lately. Maybe something that I've spoken about today. Maybe, you know, unconditional love. Maybe what an experience of Jesus, or do you even believe that that's possible? Or that little boy talking to his dad, or any of the things that I've shared with you, or something that's going on for you today, right? Nothing too overwhelming, although sometimes you don't know until you go there, right? Something present for you. And just notice. So find that piece of memory. And it could just be something that I spoke about, that little boy's experience. You can use that if you struggling, or your relationship to fear. What scares you? Think about that and then feel. In that pause, in that moment, feel it. Notice where it is in your body. Camera's doing something weird. There we go. Notice that. Don't try to change it. Just notice it. Just notice it. There it is. I'm fearing right now. I'm fearing right now. And I could take you through the next part of the process, but that is where we start. That is where we start. Then you can get curious instead of trying to get rid of it, trying to make a joke or trying to distract it away by being busy or whatever you do. Do. Whatever you do that's helping you accept life. What is the fear trying to protect? If we distract it with the doing, we miss this information. We miss what the fear is trying to protect. What's the information that this fear might be carrying? Meaning this sensation. Okay, this is the literacy. We're just starting. What would I do if I weren't afraid? If I didn't have this fear, what would I do in that situation, whatever that? So if I was that boy's mum and I wasn't afraid, I would be more supportive of that experience of him going. Now, the fear of death may have been there. So that's huge. She would have had to have accepted the fear of her child's death to some degree. Huge. So we're not saying, oh, bad mother or anything like that. We're just saying, what else, how else could she be with those fears to support that child, to support herself? Learning the literacy of fear so that she could be there more for herself and therefore without, goes to everyone around her. So what would I do if I weren't so afraid? And you can go back and maybe use these for journaling or contemplation, but how might this fear be serving my growth? How might this fear be serving my growth? And there's many other, ultimately what you could just throw all those questions out and just go, okay, feeling the sensation of whatever it is that you're challenged by right now. Feel it in the body. Where is it? Pause and be with that sensation. Just noticing it, being curious with it as much as you can, even if it's just a little right now. And then ask it what's its message? What is the intelligence it has for you? Just that simple. It's just that simple. Even noticing, let's be even more simple. I find that the more simple I am, the less you understand, or the less, not the less you understand, it's the more difficult it is. Okay. Even for myself, because our mind is number 7, right? It's the mind field, right? So all of that questioning and whatnot. So when we're just with the physicality, the sensation of what we're experiencing, if you can just pause with that, you'll notice that it will shift. It's as simple as that. We have so many processes and ways of doing things, and I can give you a million of them. I've been around for a while. But if I want to go back to the point of the circle, right? It's that. It's that. So maybe on Tuesday, we have a Tuesday sort of live that I can unpack that a little bit and maybe go through the whole sequence. But I guess this love and fear, or fear and love dance, we usually see it as these opposites. We often think of fear and love as opposites. And perfect love casts out fear. That's why we say love and light, love and light, love and light. So perfect love casts out fear, as the scriptures say. But if they're not opposites, what if they're not opposites? If they're not opposites, contemplate that. What if they're dance partners? I see energetically triple warmer and pericardium as dance partners, the masculine, the feminine. I've noticed in my own life that the things I love the most are also the things that scare me most. Right? I love this community deeply. And that means I fear disappointment. I feel like I might disappoint you, or I may not give you something that's helpful. I love the calling of ministry. And that means I fear not living up to that on some level. I love my family. That means there can be a fear of losing them. So the depth of our love often corresponds to the depth of our fear. So this isn't the problem to solve, right? This is, it's the human condition to embrace. We've got to just embrace ourselves as humans, right? I just noticed there's something in the chat. Okay. So when we try to live, when we try to love without ever feeling fear, live or love. If we're not ever feeling fear, we often end up loving safely, small, without risks. Right? We actually can't. My dad always says you can't. There's no such word as can't. But we, when we are living without ever feeling fear, we're either dead or we're walking around like we're dead, right? So, or we're numbed. We've numbed out so much. And that happens with trauma, okay? Just be aware of that. That's okay. There's work to be done. There's healing to be done. There's compassion. Fear, paradoxically, can be love's teacher. So it shows us what matters most. It calls us to protect what we cherish. And it invites us to be vulnerable enough to be hurt, because the alternative is never opening our hearts. So that could be worse. I would suggest that would be like, imagine, well, I don't know. Some of you may feel like you're walking around with a closed heart. That's one of my whatever the word is to myself. The amount of times you get hit to the heart, people dying, people injured, people leaving, people hurting emotionally, physically, psychologically, whatever, hits to the heart. It's always like, I will not close my heart. It may close a little because, most humans know how much a heart pain hurts, right? Emotionally. But that is my, not even a mantra. It's like an ode to myself. Is that a better word? That's the word. It's like I'm honoring my existence, and I will not close my heart no matter what you do to me. It's really ourselves doing it to ourselves on some level. So before we close, I just want to acknowledge that we live in times of collective fear, right? Political upheaval, everything's happening. But, we say that, but everything's always been happening. I'm a historian. I mean, we say everything's happening, but it's always been happening. It just depends where you've been looking, There's numerous conflicts that you have no idea are happening all the time. Right? There's a lot of the conflicts, a lot of the upheavals and whatnot that won't come across your news feed. There's wonderful things that you'll never know about, like the little boy who spoke to Jesus and his passed over dad. There's social division, there's economic uncertainty. The fears aren't just personal, they're communal. So what I find hopeful communities that learn to work with fear together. That's what I find hopeful, that there are communities that want to work together consciously. There are people, humans, that want to start to work together rather than be paralyzed by it. Become extraordinarily creative and strong, caring, compassionate, sharing that. Right? When we can name our fears together, when we can be conscious of those fears together, when we can distinguish between the fears that serve and those that limit, when we can support each other in the acting courageously with fear. I'll say that again. Acting courageously with the fear, with fear. That's when transformation becomes possible, right? That's what this spiritual community offers, a place to practice fear literacy together, a place to practice your literacy, your reading of fear, your understanding of it, your knowing of it, right? To learn. So we're learning that together. So we can learn that we don't have to be I was going to say fearless, to be faithful, right? To discover that courage is contagious. We want to basically, let's start wrapping up, but I'll close with this thought. Because we're well over time. Some of you came here this morning carrying your fears that you haven't spoken, right? You've come here with fears that you haven't spoken out loud. Fear about health, fear about relationships, finances, purpose, the future, all sorts of fears. Some of you are facing changes and challenges that terrify you. Some of you are being called to step into something bigger than you feel ready for. And I want you to know, your fears don't disqualify you. Your fears don't disqualify you from life, particularly what we say spiritual life, right? They're part of it. They're part of it. The anxieties don't make you weak. They make you human. Uncertainties don't mean you lack some sort of faith. They mean you're growing. So this is it. I'm going to close with this, and then I'll do a closing blessing. The goal isn't to eliminate fear. The goal isn't to eliminate fear. It's to develop a different relationship with it. I'm going to say it over and over. The goal isn't to eliminate fear. It's to develop a different, a new relationship with it. You all have a relationship with fear, but many are toxic relationships. This is an opportunity to develop a new or a different or a supportive, sustaining relationship with it. To learn that you can feel afraid and still choose unconditional love. I can be afraid and still show up and share with you. I can tell you a story about a little boy speaking to Jesus and have tears in my eyes and, start crying and be okay with that because it's real. I'm not afraid of being real. Right? You can be uncertain and still move forward. You can tremble and be brave, because courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is not the absence of fear. Vulnerability requires courage. It's not the absence of fear. It's unconditional love in action, which includes fear's presence. So take a breath. I might even do a bell. How about that? And we'll do a blessing to close. So let us close where we began, in a spirit of courage and grace. May you befriend your fears as teachers on the path. May you find the wisdom to act with love, even when you feel afraid. Because now you know a little bit more how to read. You're fear literate. May you discover that your greatest terrors often guard your greatest treasures. And may you trust that uncertainty is not the enemy of faith, but its companion. And may you remember that in this community, you never have to face your fears alone. because we walk this path of unconditional love consciously together. So go in unconditional love, and may the blessings be.
Hey